Please welcome our next speaker, Emma Boulos, presenting The Stairway to Heaven in Defense of Purgatory.
When a Christian dies, what happens? What does a Christian's journey to heaven look like? We all know if we have faith in Jesus Christ, we are saved and go to heaven. But how do we go from sinful beings on earth to sinless beings in heaven? Some say that through God's grace, we are sanctified and therefore require no further purgation after death. Others, primarily Catholics, view God's saving grace exclusively as an act of justification rather than sanctification, meaning we must go through purgatory before entering heaven. So what exactly is purgatory? Purgatory, according to the Catholic faith, is commonly known as a belief that all sinners who adopted the faith must endure some form of purgation before entering heaven. Though the concept of purgatory has been in discussion for centuries, it officially became a doctrine following the Reformation at the Council of Trent between 1545 and 1546. On the surface, purgatory appears to contradict key Protestant ideas, but with a better understanding, it is revealed that this is not the case. It is also said to have no mention within the Bible, which is why many say it has no basis for inclusion within the Christian faith. Although many Christians, like Protestants and Orthodox Christians, reject the doctrine of purgatory, I argue that purgatory is essential in purifying sinners before entering heaven, because we still have a sinful nature that is not taken away by God's grace and salvation. In Romans, the Apostle Paul says, "For I do not understand my own actions. For I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate." All men have encountered what Paul is describing. Eleanor Stump, professor of philosophy at St. Louis University, describes this phenomenon as a fractured will. Stump says that while on earth, some men experience a fractured will, meaning their higher and lower wills are not the same. The higher will is what we ought to do, and the lower will is what we want to do. And the only way to align them is by going through purgatory. Within the higher will is included our faith and our desire to be with God. As Stump writes, "There is no object, other than happiness in this life and God in the next, by which its nature necessarily moves the will to want it. God has created the will with a hunger for the good. The will by nature desires the good." Genesis 6:5 says, "For the Lord sees the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intention of the thought of his heart was only evil continually." There is no way for us to achieve our higher will while on earth. We know that we should always act virtuously, but realistically, this is never the case. Purgatory is the only way in which we are able to orient our focus to God, to rid ourselves of our sinful nature, and to align our fractured wills. Non-Catholics believe that God's grace will immediately align our wills after we die, but this way of thinking is flawed. If it is God's will to purify us immediately after death, then we can ask why he does not do so after the point of our conversion, because God does not make arbitrary decisions. If it is God's will to purify us from our fallen nature, then we could ask why we are still allowed to sin on earth. We sin on earth because in order to love God, we require a free will. Joshua 24:15 says, "If serving the Lord does not seem desirable to you, then you choose for yourself on this day whom you will serve." We choose who we put our faith in. God does not choose for us. Having faith in God should be an act of our own will, not a compulsory act. We are in a constant scuffle with our sins, and we know God would not let us suffer without reason. Since we are unable to be purified from our fallen nature on earth, we must be purified of it before we enter heaven. There is no way an impure soul can enter heaven, so purgatory is the only way in which we are able to be purified from our sinful natures. Purgatory is defined by the Catholic Church as a means of purification from our sinful nature before entering heaven. Purgatory is necessary within Christian eschatology. Though it seems to contradict Protestant ideas, it is consistent with root doctrines of Christianity, like salvation through Christ. Though we know what purgatory is, we still do not know what it looks like, despite accounts from poet Dante Alighieri or historian Jacques Legoff. It is undoubtedly complex, but this is why we should explore it further. Purgatory has a key role within every Christian's life, but it is just a matter of time until every Christian figures this out. Thank you.